Right. First bit. It's not. Yeah. Thanks, Fran.
All right, I'm going to call the policy committee meeting for FAMPO to order. You could please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm Meg Bonke. I'm the vice chair of the FAMPO committee, and I just wanted to say that our chair, Jason Graham, is out ill this evening, so he asked me to take that helm. So I'm doing that, and I appreciate everybody that's here for public comment. We'll hear from you in just a moment. And now, Polly, if you could please say if we have a quorum and who's here.
Yes, we do have a quorum. I will call the roll. Mr. Matt Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Tim Baruti.
Here.
Miss Meg Bonke.
Here.
Miss Monica Gary.
Here.
Miss Crystal Banuch.
Here.
Mr. Chris Yakubowski.
Here.
Mr. Jacob Lane.
Here.
Miss Lori Hayes.
Here.
Miss Marcy Parker.
Here.
Miss Michelle Shropshire. Thanks. And yep, quorum is present. Roll has been conducted. I have called out the people who are here.
All right, thank you very much. We have a quorum. We have an approval of the committee meeting agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Everyone cast your vote, saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That motion carried. All right, we have public involvement tonight. We have a public hearing on the intra-regional east-west mobility study, phase 2, road and bicycle / pedestrian report. I know there are a number of people here from Celebrate Virginia that would like to speak, and probably others. So you need to state your name and address for the record, and you will receive 3 minutes to speak. And Ian Ollis, our administrator, will time you, and we'll give you a little like this, like wrap it up if you would, towards in the last, when you hit your 3-minute mark. All right, so is there anybody that would like to speak under the public hearing? I will now open the public hearing. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hello, I'm Patricia Bronte from 107 Long Point Drive over in the Celebrate community. We had a meeting there which had Representative Cohen and this gentleman here, Ian, and we voiced our concerns. There were a bunch of us there, and I have something I'm giving Representative Supervisor Cohen. It's a petition from residents, not the HOA specifically, but the residents who reside in Celebrate Del Webb. And we have concerns about a river crossing and interchange off of or connecting to Celebrate Parkway in any way. We're worried about the noise and air pollution, crime, safety concerns, emergency response, because this elderly community right now, we get good fire, police, ambulance response. If that becomes some type of expressway, we're not going to have that same thing. We have many safety concerns because this is a residential area, our property devaluation, and then we have a lot of environmental and historical concerns. We have pathways down that parkway. We enjoy it how it is. It's not going to be able to, we can get down the river through pass. And we would have never purchased homes in that area if we would have known that was not going to stay residential. That's not how it was marketed to us at all. And the other thing is I have like 260 votes that share my opinion I have here. And folks would like to come, but when they found out the location where this was, there was not really handicapped or maybe a couple handicapped parking places to park or set. You're dealing with the elderly population that also doesn't like to drive at night. I would ask that you maybe consider earlier times during the day or something else, another location where they'd have a place to set, maybe park, and they surely can't walk all that distance to get in the building. So I'd like to keep that in mind, but there, like I said, I've had 260 folks talk to me. A lot of folks found the survey confusing as well, and I wanted to communicate that to you on behalf of those residents that have signed this. So I appreciate your time and hearing us. I think you may find support if it's not on Celebrate Parkway, but we don't want it on that parkway because of all those things. It's a residential area, and folks need to realize that you're dealing with senior community that resides down there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Another point of clarity. Ma'am, are you going to be giving that petition to Mr. Cohen, or are you giving it to us?
I'm going to be giving it to him to give and share with you all, because I thought he kind of was over everything.
So can I speak?
Sure.
I would recommend that a copy be given to FAMPO because we're a separate entity than the Stafford County Board of Supervisors. I know myself, Supervisor Gary and Bonke we are on the board in Stafford, but FAMPO is a separate entity. So in case, not to say Mr. Pill wouldn't give it to us, I think it'd be more beneficial to provide it to both.
Okay, well, if somebody gives me that email or whatever, I'm gonna scan that in, and I'd be happy to send it to you as well, and that further highlights some of those same concerns.
Ian can take care of that. All right, our next speaker, please.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
I'm Vanell Sanders, and I also live in the Delaware Celebrate community. And I'm here in reference to not having the bridge to come through our community because of all those stated reasons that Patricia gave.
Okay. Oh,
And we ask that the committee take strong consideration of all of these things that were listed.
thank you, ma'am. Next speaker. Sure.
My name is Robert Malkowitz. I live at 162 Long Point Drive in Stafford County. Celebrate by Delaware community.
Okay.
My wife and I enjoy walking the sidewalks all the way up and down Celebrate Virginia for our exercise. If this road becomes a major throughway, that will not happen. We will have trouble getting out of the community in a car. I am for not making Celebrate Virginia a major throughway.
Yes, sir. Next speaker. Anybody here?
There's a question.
Yes, sir.
When was this bridge proposed? Do you have an idea what, I'm sorry, my name is Darren Brown. I live in Summerton also. My question is, what day or what year was this bridge proposed? When did this all come about? Because as you said, I wanted to purchase. If I knew how it was gonna come to my house. All right,
I'm sorry, sir. So we're in the middle of a public hearing right now, I understand, but we don't engage in conversation.
okay, my question should still go on record. I understand what you're
Okay,
saying.
we'll come to you in just a moment.
But as he said, as she said, as he said, it's
Referenced in the East-West Mobility Study, so it has not been proposed. It was referenced in the study, okay? And so now this public hearing gives people an opportunity to say whether or not they're for or against. FAMPO and the Board of Supervisors in Stafford have not proposed a river crossing.
okay, so I just need question, I need questions answered before I can say yea or nay.
Okay, well, this isn't the
When,
time.
when's your appropriate time?
Madam Chair, point of clarification, we have to
Same
stop engaging. We have to move forward with public comment.
I need them.
We need to move forward with public comments.
So right now.
This is a
we're in the
comment.
middle of- But, right,
So this is not a comment?
Ian, maybe you can go out and explain it to him. Thank you.
Well, why can't you just tell me what I'm asking?
It's just an order of the meeting.
I understand.
Ian,
I
All right,
understand
so-
I understand
Yeah,
everything
go.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
But,
I can answer, or I can take them.
okay, so let me just.
Mr. Hollis, can you take him over
I
there?
got one
Hold up
on the clock. I think that in my 30 years in law enforcement, that putting a highway to an old folks home, connecting it to a part of Fredericksburg, that's not gonna be good for you. 30 years from now, when we're all gone, that property value is gonna die because nobody's gonna buy those homes. So you're gonna have a bunch of houses over there that nobody wants to live in. I'll be fine. Because this bridge might be 10, 15 years off. But when it's time for people to come back after us, nobody's buying that property. So you're gonna have a bridge connecting nothing to a mall. Good luck. All right? I got 39 seconds, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment. All right,
Sir? You said you want to explain it to me? I'll listen to you.
okay, is there anybody out here that would like to speak? Okay, if you could please come into the room. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Smith Johnson. I'm a resident of Celebrate. I'm here this evening to speak, and the comments that I would make are going to be very brief. Like some of my fellow Celebrate community people, I walk the trails and the areas that are lining along the Celebrate Parkway. And when I walk up to the gated area where the golf club used to be, there's a sign currently posted there. I don't know if you're familiar with it. The sign actually states that this will be the entrance to a connector to the other side. So if you haven't seen that, I want to drive and see it. It already states that it will be connected. It's not up for public hearing. It's just stating that this is the future and it will be connected. That being said, it certainly gives you the sense of feeling that whatever your comments may be, your feelings or experiences may be, that this is already in the works, even though you just indicated that this is part of the process. As someone who has served on boards and served on planning commissions, I understand how that process works. And as a result of that, my question is simply, when the funding has been identified, if it has not already been so, and it is secured, and all of your processes have subsided, your analysis, your surveys for the community, et cetera, what is the projected timeframe for completing the bridge? That's my question.
All right, that concludes your public
That
comment.
concludes my public comments.
Thank you very much, Pam. Right, next, this gentleman back here.
Your time. I have
If you could please state your
my name
name.
is Alan Inwood. I'm from Celebrate.
Okay.
Okay, and obviously you can see the anger of the members of Celebrate. We don't want a bridge going through with a lot of traffic. But we would be possibly, at least I would be attuned to having a bridge, but a pedestrian bicycle bridge. And that would open up the entire area of Fredericksburg to tourism. It also would do it so people can go from one spot to the other. The one bridge is going to be closed down very soon because it's going to be reconstructed. They have money for that from what I read in the paper. And you don't really want to go over 17 past 95 on a bicycle. Okay, to get down to the bridge and then through. I tried that the first few years I lived here. And it's even worse now.
You're still alive.
Yeah, well, I used to bike ride in Manhattan, so you can go there, Brooklyn, you can go anyplace. But it's really not a great idea. However, if you open up the map and you go through, connect it over to the trail, the canal trail, and then you can go from when they finish the trail from courthouse in Spotsylvania, supposed to be a trail, I never did it. And then you can go all the way up, basically to 17 where the supermarket Giant is. And you can use that area. And you can open up the whole thing for tourism, for people to ride. People will come from other areas of 20, 30 miles of bike trails, all interconnected. And also it'll allow the entire area to flourish, not just for, it allow recreation, because when you have all these houses, like, people got to do something. They also want to have some place safe for their kids. They want to have some place for where to go bike riding and have exercise. This area is a balance. It's a balance of suburbia, starting, which is getting strong, a little bit of city, but the agricultural and area, the rural area, is a big draw. And as you keep plugging that down, you're going to make this area less desirable.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Rosalind Reeder. I reside at 110 Barnegat Drive, also in Celebrate. And the point that I'd like to make, first of all, the survey questions, as they were written, are not going to yield clear results. They were sort of ambiguous, and there were other problems with the questions. Those were cited in the emails that I reviewed under 5A, so I won't go into. There are also several questions in that input about the accuracy of the information within the study, primarily cost and also additional costs that weren't represented in the figures. So that's another concern of mine. And based on that, I don't think that putting a river crossing at the end of Celebrate Parkway is going to be the best use of funds. I think we would be much better served for that north-south traffic, those trucks that are coming down from Pennsylvania and other places north, trying to get south on 95, avoiding Washington, D.C. Moving the river crossing over to Celebrate is not going to do it. It's just a short-term fix and not a very good one. And so I think also we've just put in these extra lanes on I-95. I've seen them. I think we should, before we make a decision on building another bridge, let's see how that's working. And finally, I am against putting a river crossing at the end of Celebrate Parkway for the reasons mentioned and for several reasons cited in those very detailed responses on your emails. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else over here in this line that would like to speak? Okay. Okay.
Who's this lady? I'm Fran Larkins, and I live at 40 Battery Point Drive in South Stafford in the community of Celebrate. I think people, and a lot has already been said about how unsafe and how much of a problem it would be for the residents along Celebrate Parkway if there was a bridge put at the end. I realize that that's only one of several options, but I think anything that's going to allow in that area for trucks to have another route to take, that they will take that route. And I think it will make things really bad. What I'd like to see is us to put instead, let's consider some other options. I'd like to be able to extend those I-95 local lanes further down toward below Massaponax. Because if drivers knew that they could count on there not being a backup just below Route 3, more would probably stay in the through lanes and improve local traffic even more. Surely this is something that Spotsylvania County could support. Lastly, isn't there an elected official or two in this room that could figure out how to work with Culpeper and Orange counties for a true outer connector? That's like 30 years we've been talking about this, to a more rural area. Or dare I suggest putting pressure on state officials in Virginia to work with Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania to start the ball rolling on an eastern route around Washington, D.C. from Philadelphia to Richmond. I hope you'd use your influence with our governor and the Commonwealth Transportation Board. This could provide relief for all Northern Virginia. You've got to think outside the box because you're just hitting your heads together and you're not working together. So we've got to do more. And this has been, I've been watching this for about 12, 15 years now. So it's, what is it? Repeating yourself over and over again, not accomplishing anything isn't very smart. So, thank you.
Is there anybody else over here in this line that would like to speak? Please stand up. Okay, right here.
Madam Chair, if I could, my name is Joe Bonds. I live at 64 Mendoza Way, and I'm not going to go over a lot of the information that a lot of people have about concerns about traffic and so forth. I agree with all of those. But what I'm asking you tonight is to think about NIMBY. And let me explain that a little bit. In my hometown, I moved here a year and a half ago, but in my old hometown, I worked here, I served on a city council for 12 years. And the term NIMBY comes up. And if anybody doesn't know what NIMBY is, it's not in my backyard. So think about the term NIMBY. And if there was ever an example of the term NIMBY, this is it, because now we're proposing a major thoroughfare literally in many of these people's backyards. So as you go through now and then at the next meeting when you actually have to vote on this, I'd ask you to think about not all of these facts and figures, but think of these people and think of their livelihoods and think about the fact that they've invested into their homes and everything and celebrate. Didn't have any idea that now all of a sudden we're going to have a major or potential thoroughfare going through there. And no data, no nothing. I know when I moved here, my real estate agent and I did a lot of research, making sure that we were going to go to an area where we weren't going to see a lot of problems or future growth or whatever. And we found the perfect little community and celebrate. And so as you think about this and you go through here, think about NIMBY and think about the potential effects your vote will have on all of these people, on their home values, on their future life, on their future livelihoods, because it really will make a difference. So with that, I just say thank you and, consider the term NIMBY, but think about it in a positive way and think of these folks when you do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, are there people out here? Yes.
Hello, I'm Joe Brito, 544 West Rocky Run Road in Hartwood. I represent over 4,600 people that have signed petitions in support of the Fredericksburg Interconnector and Trail Network. The Interconnector and Trail Network would start on the west side of 95 at Garrisonville Road, and it uses 5 existing roads linked together to create a 15-mile road that would end on Harrison Road. This road would relieve traffic on many of the interchanges that you're proposing. So instead of building 2 new interchanges, the road itself would help relieve the traffic and provide shorter routes. The situation is a 15-mile road, you'd only need 7 miles of new road because you link the existing road, so it cuts down on cost, it cuts down on environmental impacts, and it cuts down on impacts on real property. If 25,000 people would use a portion of this 15-mile road to reduce driving time by 3 miles apiece, you're talking a reduction of 75,000 miles per day of driving. So that reduction would massively reduce the carbon footprint in our region. And we have over $100 million of infrastructure already built, and it's not being used, it's underused, but yet we sit in gridlock. So we need to put it all together and maximize the use of the infrastructure that we have. And the trail network could also be used for the East Coast Greenway Trail. So if that was the case, you wouldn't necessarily have to put the trail down Trustlow Road and wipe out 100 houses over there. I mean, this is the only river crossing that wouldn't directly impact a single house. There's only 2 landowners that it would impact, the Silver Company and the city of Fredericksburg. So it just makes sense to cross the river there. And I've been around for almost 30 years on this, and I've seen the studies. And there's studies in 98, there's studies in 2013, and this study, and each study showed that it reduced traffic on Route 17, Route 3, and I guess my time was up, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brito. Okay, the next speaker that's out here, please, if you could please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jay Gillis. I live at 309 Snowy Egret Way in Stafford, Hartford. Until 3 years ago, my family resided on Garrisonville Road. We now live off of Warrenton Road. Since day one, when we moved here in 2001, 20 years ago, traffic has factored into our daily lives like nowhere else I've ever lived. When I go into Potomac Mills, what's I-95 look like? I go to Fredericksburg, what's going on in I-95? We all know Route 1 is no better when the traffic is bad. There are so many good things here. That's why I call Stafford home now. But I believe we can do better. More recently, it's not only what's happening on 95, but how do I get to 90? If I'm on Garrisonville Road, I'm sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic by Onville Road. And when I'm on Route 17, sometimes I back up to Celebrate Virginia Parkway, waiting for traffic and lights to get to 95. Current development and future growth demands a new north-south route. We have an opportunity to do better, and I support the Interconnector Trail Network. Clearly, Celebrate Virginia Parkway was built for more than local residential traffic. It's a 4-lane parkway with an underpass to access vehicles traveling from the west. It fits the definition of what I found to be a parkway, a multi-lane, bi-directional main artery with a center landscape median. It's ready for use. It's there. I don't know why it was built so large, but it was built with the anticipation of something more than a golf course and the homes. Celebrate Virginia Park, a bridge connecting Celebrate Virginia Parkway to Central Park in Fredericksburg will significantly enhance the greater Stafford population's quality of life. I believe the bridge, the network and the bridge would be a win for all parties. I ask you to consider that in your thoughts, and I realize I'm probably the minority tonight, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, next. Sure. Please come on in.
My name's Matthew Schultz, 37 Springville Drive, Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm also in the minority in this room, I can tell you that. I want the bridge built, along with about, I don't know, 1,000 or 10,000 other people on that side of the county. If you go from Quantico to the river, it takes about, what, 30, 35 minutes going the back way through the county. If I go to 610 from where I live in the southwestern part of the county, I have to take back roads up to Garrisonville and then Garrisonville to 95 to get up to DC. Either that or I can take 17, 95 up to DC. And again, like the gentleman just said a second ago, you're constantly looking at the traffic, you're looking at ways, figuring out which way is the best way to go. In fact, there's times where just choosing which store you're going to go to, whether it's this Walmart on 610, the Walmart on 17, the Walmart on Central Park, or the Costco on Central Park, or the Costco up in Woodbridge, which direction are you going? It all depends on the traffic. That's it, plain and simple. We're being trapped. So I get it. I understand that Celebrate Virginia, you guys don't want additional traffic coming through there. Sympathetic to you, but you're being selfish. Yes. To the rest of the county, plain and simple. It is extremely selfish. It's not, I apologize.
You need to address the board, not the people.
I apologize for using the word selfish, but at the same time, it is, nonetheless. The bridge needs to be built. I don't even think one bridge is gonna be enough. I think you're gonna need a second bridge within the next 10 years and maybe even a third farther down once you get closer to Culpeper. The traffic needs to be opened up. Literally, we are trapped. I am a driver in this county. I've got 4 kids. I'm driving to activities all over the place. There is no way public transportation is ever gonna serve me. It's not gonna happen. Are you gonna put a BRE out on Poplar? Are you gonna put a are you gonna put a bus stop out on Parkland Road? How is it ever gonna help me to get down to Fredericksburg? I get, public transportation works great here in Fredericksburg, and it works great maybe along the BRE all the way up to northern, the northern part of the county. But west of 95, there are thousands of citizens that are part of urban sprawl, and I don't like urban sprawl either, but it's already there. So what are you gonna do? You gotta fix it. And the bridge is the best option. And it's one of like 3 bridges that are coming. We need this now, we need this 10 years ago, we need this 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So inaction is not an option anymore. The bridge needs to be built. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, who else would like to come speak? Yes, ma'am, please come in. And then this gentleman, you'll be right behind her.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry I don't live in that area. Choose to live in.
Ma'am, you need to address the board in here.
We had no idea it was going to be, hadn't thought of any bridge, just was chilling.
Your name is state your name.
Ellen Kennedy, sorry,
Thank you.
just so angry. We had no idea when we moved in there was going to be a bridge, Celebrate Parkway, possibly at the end of it, and it's not totally fair, and especially if there's going to be a bunch of trucks, especially if it's going to be connected to I-95 and so on. That would be horrible. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, your time.
Okay, I'm Gary from Gate from Celebrate. I'm here just to show support for those that are against this. A couple things. We've all talked about the increased traffic, the increased noise. That traffic being especially commercial is a concern. Those things lead to health issues from increased pollution, safety issues for walking along the highway, safety issues trying to access the highway, and safety issues from a likely increase in crime. This is a residential area with senior living on both sides of the highway, and should not be, a traffic cut through.
All right, thank you so much. All right, is there anybody else out here who would like to speak? Seeing none, anybody in this room? Yes, sir.
My name is Andrew Gardner. I reside at 110 Long Point Drive. I've only been in the community since April of 2018, but I consider it home. I used to live in the Falmouth area, and when I got the opportunity to move into Celebrate, I considered it a privilege that I could be in this kind of community. And I'm still working. I haven't been able to take advantage of all the amenities. I'm looking forward to when that day comes. And I suspect that even with all our opposing votes, we may end up seeing the bridge put in and all the traffic come. And, I oppose that, but if the votes of this committee decide to go ahead with the plan to put the bridge in and have all that traffic come through, I hope that you will have compassion for that community to do what can be done to protect our property values, to make, to dampen the noise that is going to be a result of the traffic through a residential community. Maybe create a couple different walkways that will go over the traffic, like you see in all kinds of cities when they have pedestrian traffic. Just think of the different ways that you can minimize the impact upon the community if you do decide to see our objections as not enough to justify hearing what we have to say. I recognize that sometimes that's the way things go. You don't always get what you want. So I hope that this committee will give consideration to what can be done for this community, because we have very legitimate concerns. And though you may see this, and everybody can point to all the positives for transportation, just don't forget about the negatives that will bring in our lives, and see what you can do to try and mitigate those negative aspects to this.
All right, thank you very much. All right, is there anybody else?
One last one, I think.
Okay.
Marlene, born and raised in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I'm not from Celebrate, Virginia, but I'm not particularly happy with the road development proposed in this program here. It unfortunately is very much like all the other programs that have been foisted on us over the years. It's trying to pave our way out of congestion, which we should know by now is not working. And based on past history, we know that it's going to result in induced traffic. It's going to result in induced suburban sprawl. There's going to be wasted energy, huge amount of wasted billions of dollars of wasted tax money, not to mention the harm to the environment. What we need is not more projects. What we need is a change in policy or change in policies. Now, policy in the past has been to solve this supply-demand problem, and it is a supply-demand problem. The supply of roads aren't keeping up with demand. But we've been mindlessly just going ahead and solving it on the supply side by just putting down more and more asphalt, despite the fact that it's not working. It's time to switch to the demand side and reduce the demand on the roads so the roads that we got will fit the traffic that's there. This can be done. It's been done in other countries. There's no reason why we can't do it. Even in our country, in California, for example, they've recently proposed abolishing single-family zoning so that the existing communities can beef up their density and be susceptible to walking, biking, and public transit. They've also suggested giving $1,000 bonus per dwelling to people that don't buy a car. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do those, but I'm suggesting we start thinking like those. Start thinking about how we can reduce the demand. Those of you who know me already know that I have a personal preference, and that is congestion pricing. And I know also that some of you are going to say, well, congestion pricing is not allowed by law. True. But just because a bunch of road building lobbyists back in the 40s managed to get a regulation on the books prohibiting it, doesn't mean that we can't go to Washington and ask them to scratch that off. Maybe we can get together with other NPOs, get together with the state, and approach Congress and politely ask, can we start using congestion pricing? The nice thing about congestion pricing is it not only stops the congestion instantly, it also provides funds from the toll money that we can use to support mass transit. Transit that can go to pedestrian-oriented places such as residential, commercial, and industrial. I'll point out to Matt that I did not say transit to sprawl. Transit to sprawl.
Wrap up.
Yeah, transit to sprawl would be just as foolish as what we've been doing for the past 60 years, and including this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Farley. All right, looks like we have received all the public comment. I will now close the public hearing.
I have a comment
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
online. This is John Kleckner. I live at 240 Long Point Drive in Celebrate. I sent you all a letter with comments and 58 questions. I'm not going to go through those, but there are a couple points that I think people need to consider. The infrastructure north of the bridge needs improvement. There are places where Celebrate Parkway is only one lane in each direction. And to say that the road will handle the traffic, you need to do a study of traffic versus the thickness index of the road. The second thing is the intersections on Route 17 are not built to handle this level of traffic turning on to Celebrate Parkway. So those intersections need to be rebuilt. And I think anytime you give a cost estimate for what's going on with the bridge and you include the costs south of the bridge, you need to include the additional costs for north of the bridge. Thank you. I'm against the crossing.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else online? Time. But you can come to our next meeting if you like. Okay, I want to make sure that that public comment was included in our public hearing. Okay.
All of this is recorded, what gets said, and all the comments were sent in writing. Pick up there.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Would you Frank, can you hear just a little bit louder?
Sure. Yes, so all of our meetings are recorded, so if there's no comment that gets made that isn't recorded, it's on the recording. We save the recording on the website. And all the comments that are submitted by email, Polly over there is our full-time public engagement officer and retains all of the comments that they are given to the policy committee. And also we have the survey as well. All of that is retained and is made available to the policy committee. So in fact, all of that is captured.
All right, thank you very much. Now, do we have any regular public comments that are not related to the East-West Mobility Study? Is there anybody here that would like to, there are 3 minutes on any other items that are not related to the East-West Mobility Study? Okay, is there anybody online? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, Smith.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, cast your vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to Ian Ollis, our FAMPO Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Got some slides for you. In the interest of time, will go as quickly as possible. Can I have well, let me stand there. I just need a clicker. Can I use this? So we're just going to look at our smart scale stuff. The bridge study working group that we've got together, the Transportation Alternatives Program, which used to be called the TAP program, some legislation which you may have heard about. First of all, just some welcomes. Some of our policy committee members and alternates have changed. Welcome to Supervisor Laurie Hayes. Yes, now a full voting member, was an alternate before. We welcome Supervisor Lane now as a full voting member as well. We welcome back the supervisors, Tim McLaughlin and David Ross, now as alternates on the committee. And we also welcome Ms. Melody Fowler from FXB Go, formerly Fred Regional Transit, as a non-voting member. Great to have you.
Mr. Holmes, if you could just mention that Lori and Jacob are both representing Spotsylvania County.
Yes, representing Spotsylvania County, I beg your pardon. Our big smart scale win, you'll hear more about that later. Carrie will explain the details to you. I just want to give a bunch of thanks. We did exceptionally well in smart scale this year, but it takes a lot of work to do well. Smart scale is a program, for those of you who don't know, where you have to bid, in a sense. You have to apply to have your projects funded. So you first of all have to have projects. You have to then comply with all the criteria, put together the applications, submit those applications, and the state of Virginia then scores every project. And those that get better scores typically get funded by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So I just want to thank Carrie for putting together these applications. A lot of after hours and weekend work, last minute, get a phone call. Hey, where's your economic development document or whatever the heck it is? Thank you to Carrie for a huge lift on getting that work done. And also our former employees, Adam and Matthew, who started off the process when they worked at FAMPO. I just want to thank the staff from our jurisdictions, from the city of Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania County, Stafford County, who put in a huge amount of effort on both their own local projects, but also on our regional projects, helping us to refine the applications, to improve them. And also VDOT engineers, as well as Stephen Ains and Linda Vasut, who worked with us on getting those submissions, getting those projects submitted to the state. And other VDOT staff who helped us, particularly the engineers, to refine those projects. Without all of these people working really hard, we would have not got good scores on our projects and would not have got the funding. And you'll see later, between the FAMPO and GWRC projects, we got almost $49 million worth of projects funded, including sidewalks, bike paths, all those other things, not all roadways. In fact, some people think it's too many bike paths that we got funded this year. And you'll see there's about $100 million worth of projects that each of our jurisdictions collectively got. That means that this team of people put together good enough projects that we could get $150 million worth of projects funded in our region. And it also represents the highest number of projects we were able to get funded. Bearing in mind that these are recommendations, the Commonwealth Transportation Board may make some changes and edits to those projects, and we wait to see whether they finally get voted through. But it's a very good job, and I just want to thank all those people. Carrie will explain the details to you. Transportation alternatives, just quickly, this is an application for transportation alternatives, not roadways, right? Anything but putting people in their car on their own on the road. And you have to apply. There's about $2 million per cycle per district that is available. And our jurisdictions have to apply for those. The transportation management area, which those of you don't know, is the northern part of Stafford County that is seen as part of the Washington, D.C. urbanized area. They get a special set aside, which is an additional $177,000 towards bike paths or transportation alternative programs. And we asked Stafford County to produce a project that FAMPO can then look at and consider to submit for that. It specifically will go to Stafford County. Our other jurisdictions can apply to the general pot. Stafford County gets this additional set aside because they are part of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Sorry, I'm going backwards. CMAQ and STGB. We had a record number of applications this year. This is a program where the state gives us funding, and we as FAMPO get to decide which local projects get awarded that funding, and we have a scoring program of our own internally. John will give you an update on that. We had some teething problems. The methodology is brand new. The methodology was developed by the FAMPO TAC subcommittee. FAMPO policy committee approved it, but this is the first time we're using it. So there's a couple of teething problems, and we might need to bring an amendment to you to improve it. But it tries to be fair and objective. When we received the applications from our jurisdictions and partners, we needed our applicants to make some modifications to their projects because it's the first time around and we had some teething problems. So I made a decision over the holiday period when the policy committee was not in session to allow the applicants additional week to modify and correct their applications to avoid them having been screened out. I'm asking you as the policy committee to endorse or condone my decision in retrospect. I couldn't call the whole policy committee together to give the applicants an extra week. So I'm kind of a neutral party because FAMPO doesn't apply for these projects, but I took the decision to allow them an extra week to make corrections because we found a number of errors and it wasn't one jurisdiction or one applicant, all 4 applicants had problems with the applications, technical things, where a certain category, you had to comply with certain conditions. Sometimes they didn't comply with the conditions. They all remedied those during that week, and I think we got a much better set of projects. They were all corrected, so I'm asking your pardon or your condonement for that action to give them an extra week. We did meet with VDOT about this question that the gentleman mentioned earlier. This is a cross-section through that US 1 bridge over the Rappahannock at Falmouth. And our request to VDOT was to try and find a way to put a shared use path, bike and pedestrian path, on one or other side of the bridge, or at least a bike path on the one side and a sidewalk on the other. VDOT pointed out that there are some technical challenges with doing that. The width of the substructure is only a certain distance. And if you go beyond a certain size of widening it, you've got to put down either piers or pillars to support that. It's a massive extra cost. Anyway, we've explored that so far with VDOT. We've tried to find a way, haven't at this stage found a way because of the problem of the width of the substructure that holds up that bridge. We had a suggestion from the VDOT engineers. This is a study that was done years ago to put a parallel bike and pedestrian path parallel to the US 1 bridge as an alternative, which the VDOT engineers suggested However, the big key thing is that that alternative isn't funded. The renovation of the bridge is funded. It's about $63 million by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. If we can't put a bike path on here, we would have to raise the funding to put a separate path, but it was the suggestion from them. This is a somewhat controversial bill, and it's part of my job as the administrator to point out to you things that are going on around. Some of you know about this already. This Virginia Senate has this bill introduced, Senate Bill 1137 by Mr. McPike, and it is to create a Fredericksburg Area Transportation Authority to raise additional funds to fund larger transportation projects. I'm just pointing it out to you. We're aware of it. I've spoken with a number of our regional bodies, such as the Chamber of Commerce, about it, and also emailed Mr. McPike to ask him just for some further background information, what his intention is, and whether he is taking input from local bodies as to his proposal. I haven't yet heard back, but just on behalf of FAMPO, I reached out to him to see whether we could find out more information. Today, this afternoon, we added this slide because today, the Census Bureau tabled the maps of the new urban areas for the country, the entire country. And I thought I'd just give you a quick snapshot. We'll give you further information in due course. The red over there represents the official urban areas within our region based on the 2010 census. The blue over here represents today's publication, which shows, as a result of the 2020 census, what the urbanized area of our region now looks like, according to the Census Bureau. Remember, if you will, that they published that they were changing the rules of what determines what is an urbanized area or an urban area. And we were concerned. We sent our comments into the Census Bureau to say that we're concerned that many of the urbanized or urban areas in the United States would shrink because the way they're now counting is different, right? So this is the result. The result is that the FAMPO, or the Fredericksburg, it's called the Fredericksburg urbanized area, which is this portion here in blue, has actually grown. The total population, the square mile area has grown. The North Stafford one hasn't grown quite as much. It's slightly bigger. I've circled where the major changes are. Our urbanized area now goes all the way to the border with Caroline County, and it never did before. So should Caroline County allow development right next to that blue in their county, they would, in the next census period, probably automatically become members of FAMPO because the urbanized area would have crossed the boundary into Caroline County. We didn't expect that, quite frankly. That is something that is unusual. Also, you remember that whole complaint we had about them making squiggly boundaries based on only absolute urban areas and not any of the infill. So they've removed the infill. If you look at that map and look at this one, there's now a big hole in what used to be called our urban area. They're saying that part of it is no longer urban. So a big chunk in Spotsylvania is no longer considered urban by the Census Bureau. This is joined to some little areas that were there earlier. There's a change there. There's a bit of a change here out west in Spotsylvania. And then if you go north of the river, that has changed. It's the Berea sort of area in Stafford County has changed. The gap is narrowing between the northern urban area and the southern one. You'll remember this is technically and legally part of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan urban area in northern Stafford, whereas Fredericksburg is not. Should that gap closed, that may change. It hasn't closed, but it's certainly getting closer together, and one day it's going to close, and then this will be part of the urban area. We're not very much closer to Orange County, but certainly there's been a lot of infill urban development here, and it is slowly moving towards Orange County. Not very much closer to King George County. This hasn't shifted very much at this stage. Just a quick snapshot for you. We'll give you further information in the future in due course. Dealing with congestion. What many folks have been talking about tonight. What do we do about congestion? Tonight, we have the Executive Director of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority is going to share with us in a moment what the future plans for passenger rail are in the state of Virginia and in our region, and how that will perhaps help with this congestion problem. Next month, we have invited DLPT and OmniRide, as per Mr. Kelly and others' request, with some participation, my friend, to explain to us what their future plans are and how that will impact congestion. Can it help? Can it alleviate, can these methods alleviate some of the congestion that we're trying to solve with building extra lanes on roads or not? And then I've been asked to arrange a facilitator. The March FAMPO Policy Committee meeting is going to be a very short meeting. We're going to replace it with a workshop, so you all can discuss what you've been hearing tonight, next week, next month, the following month. The inputs you've got, then have a workshop as the policy committee to decide what our policy is on congestion. Do we widen all the roads? Do we build more train lines, more stations? Do we provide more commuter buses? Do we provide more freight? How are we going to solve the 2050 congestion? The East-West study proposes a lot of roadway improvements. Hopefully we'll hear also other options, including looking at density and wet-put housing. The Freight Summit report is ready finally. A successful Freight Summit, and we will present the Freight Summit report in the February committee meetings. That's all I have for you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Olis. Any questions?
That was easy.
All right, no questions. All right, the next items, we only have one action item, which is item 8F, but everything else is for discussion. So first, I'd like to introduce Mr. DJ Statler with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, also known as VPRA, and he's going to give us a long and a short-term future for the FAMPO region. It's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And when you say I'm going to give you a long range vision, but I'll keep it very, very short because I know it's late evening. So, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Again, I'm DJ Statler. I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. I was employee number one. It's a new authority, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But it's exciting, especially for me to be here because I am a 20-plus year resident of this area. And growing up here with two children and having them both graduate from Riverbend, I have been painfully familiar, did I say painfully? I've been excitingly familiar with all of the congestion and the traffic and really the problems we have in getting around here. And it used to be Route 3. You could get to the Outback in about 10 minutes from my house, and now it takes about a half hour. So I am keenly aware of the congestion issues that we have here. Virginia Passenger Rail Authority was created by the General Assembly in 2020. And interestingly enough, the gentleman that was here earlier that left, he used the statement, "We cannot pave ourselves out of congestion." That statement is exactly why VPRA was created. Former Secretary of Transportation Shannon Valentine was presented with a solution for the traffic between Washington, D.C. and Richmond on 95. And that solution was, we will add 2 more lanes, one on either side to 95. She asked the question very candidly to VDOT, how much will this cost? And they said $12 billion. She said, wow, that's a lot of money. How long will it take? They said about 10 years. She said, wow, that's a long time. She then asked the most important question, 10 years from now, $12 billion from now, will those lanes end this congestion? And the answer was, as the gentleman pointed out, no, by that time you'll need to add more lanes. And she said, we have got to do something different. And with that conversation started a look at how we can increase and improve rail transportation here in the Commonwealth. Short story, not quite as long, but still short. VPRA was created. The Virginia Passenger Rail Authority has been put in place by the General Assembly to improve and enhance rail transportation in the Commonwealth of Virginia statewide. When we looked at this, the first thing we had to do is we had to create more infrastructure coming from DC southbound, not only south, but also west out of Manassas. They wanted to add trains, but they couldn't because the infrastructure was owned by the freight railroads. Then we were created. So we were created with the authority to design, build, add all this capital. consult and contract with Amtrak or other rail operators to run the trains and to ensure that we could grow service throughout the Commonwealth. You see on this map here, this is the map of rail lines that we will either own or operate on. A key part of VPRA is we are eligible to be direct recipients of funds from DOT. We were fortunate because we were created shortly before the IIJA and all this federal funding became available. So we are actually keenly positioned to take advantage of a lot of the funding. Governed by a 15-member board appointed by the governor, I report directly to them. We serve at their pleasure. Ian talked about the fact that next month DRPT, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, will be here. They are the group that really created or pushed for the creation of VPRA. This chart, and I promise you I'm not going to read it, tells you the difference between what DRPT does and what VPRA does, because we overlap a lot, but there are key differences. Short story, DRPT does the planning for all public transportation, including rail. We are the implementation piece of that passenger rail part. They do with freight, we deal with passenger. We are just the implementation piece. I'm going to talk a lot, I'm going to talk a little because it's getting late, about $4 billion worth of projects that we're responsible for delivering between now and 2030 to improve infrastructure. We are not here to build bridges. We are not here to add tracks. That's what we're doing. But the only reason we're doing it is to add more trains for more people to get where they want to go when they want to get there. If we build all this stuff and people don't get on the trains, we have failed. So here's just a breakdown of what the different organizations do. Again, it's in the material, you guys can see it. Two phases were contemplated when we were first created, phase 1 and phase 2, aptly named and numbered. I thought that was brilliant. What they do is they separate the first portfolio of projects. Phase 1 ends in 2026. Second phase ends in 2030, excuse me. Each of those phases results in more trains, more service. The goal is to go from Union Station originally down to Fredericksburg and then to Richmond. We want to have dedicated passenger tracks. So the biggest cause for poor on-time performance in the country really is freight train interference. You have tracks that are shared right now with big freight trains that we hear going through here. They go very slowly. Commuter trains, they go a little faster, but they stop every couple miles. And then the passenger, the intercity trains, they like to go really fast, but when these trains get in front of them, it's very congested. Even if it's perfectly orchestrated, it's very difficult to manage because you only have a couple tracks. Some are going very slow, some are going very fast. What we want to do and what we will have for a big part of this network by the end of 2030 is have dedicated passenger tracks. So there are no freight trains in the way that we, VPRA, have control over. Again, $4 billion for the projects, and I'll go through them in very high level. But you see them right here. We're adding sidings, we're adding tracks, we're doing a lot of different things. Here are the Northern Virginia projects. I'm not going to talk about them in detail, but you see we're adding a 4th track here. Long Bridge adds 2 extra passenger-only tracks across Potomac. That's really the choke point for everything going from the northeast to the southeast and southwest. Adding sidings along the way as we go down, just so we have more fluidity. That is just in phase 1 and 2. Eventually, we'd like to have 4 tracks almost the whole way down. Specifically in Fredericksburg, you see what we're doing. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sidings that come through this area. That's going to be happening again before 2030, and that's when all of this new service will start. Fredericksburg in particular, VRE has signed a contract with a contractor who will be rehabilitating, revitalizing the Fredericksburg station, which is right next to us. That work is begun. Yes. You'll see it in earnest in the next couple months. It should be done by the end of this calendar year, early next calendar year. As someone who rode the VRE from Fredericksburg every day for years and years and years, took the 5 a.m. train, the most important thing to me is they're putting a staircase on this side of the platform, so you don't have to cross the street, come right down here. Again, that's going to be done by the end of this year, early next year. Long-term Fredericksburg plans. Phases 1 and 2, all you're really going to see are the station and then a lot more capacity. But once we get to 3 and 4, which we don't have funds for yet, you're going to see a 3rd track coming through here, eventually a bridge over that Rappahannock, which will give you much more capacity here in Fredericksburg. What does this do for us? As you see from the slide, 4 new VRE round trips on the Fredericksburg line by the end of phase 1, 2 more after that by the end of phase 2. So that increases overall VRE performance or capacity by 75%. One of the more important things is we're going to be adding weekend and evening service. It's a big challenge for us here. For example, after this meeting's over, I'd love to get a VRA train and go north of the city. Can't do it. Want to go see a Nationals game, come home from the Nationals game in DC? Can't do it. The last train ends at like 8 o'clock. This is going to change. We're going to have later service starting phase 1 and then in phase 2. The other thing that you're going to see is the state-supported Amtrak trains. They're going to go from 6 to 13. During peak hours, we will have hourly service south of Richmond and also DC, which is a lot more trains than you get now. Here's a string map of all the service. You see the existing service is here in the middle. And then as we go out, this was added this year, and then you go further out to 2030, you see the number of trains that are being added on the re trains. You see we're going to be adding the nighttime trains that we already talked about, so you've got different opportunities to go later at night and the weekend. Also, northern trains will have more weekend north trains as well. And here is the Amtrak service that is proposed to include, if you look at the second bullet, more opportunities for a reverse commute. So more ability for folks who live in the Woodbridge area or in the Falls Church area to take a train down to the Fredericksburg area, work, visit, do something here, and then at the end of the day, go for the north. All of the new trains we're adding are going to be daily trains 7 days a week. Finally, and I'm within my 10 minutes, Ian, you didn't think I'd do it. Finally, in 2026, I'm not done yet. These are the new trains. So we're working with Amtrak. Amtrak got a lot of federal money. They're buying brand new trains that are going to be dual mode trains. For those of you that don't know, north of Washington, D.C., the railroad is run under catenary. It's electrified. Goes faster. That's fantastic. It's better for the environment. It's a not really more reliable, but it's a better ride. Right now, however, when you come south, when you get to DC, they've got to take that electric engine off, lights go off, bathrooms closed, you can't buy a soda, you got to sit there for about a half hour, they put the diesel train on, and then it comes south. These new trains, the engineer conductor will just have to flip a switch, the catenary, the pantograph comes down, and it switches from an electric locomotive to a diesel locomotive. Boom, you're right out. So what is now a 50-minute wait in Washington, D.C. is going to turn into about a 15-minute wait, just long enough to let people get off, people get back on, change the crews. And again, new, accessible for all, much wider and more pleasing. That comes in 2026. So that is $4 billion worth of tremendous transformational improvement in 9 minutes and 15 seconds. 45 seconds for questions if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Stadler? Yes.
Yeah, and thank you. So who are we serving? I know you have VREs, commuters, passenger. I'm in Fredericksburg. I'm going to Richmond. I would never take the train because it's not taking me to short pump. It's not taking me to where I want to go. Hence the problem with trains. So I know that we focus on that. And I'm not saying it's not part of a bigger picture, so I don't want to get yelled at. My friend over here.
Matt probably wouldn't do that.
But it improves on 95, and that's fine. But as a local elected official, I honestly don't care about 95. And I'm tired of 95 throwing money and more money and more money. Because once you get down here, you get off the VR8, our internal roads are horrible. So this is fantastic for those folks to continue us being a bedroom community to work up in DC and North Virginia and Maryland. But I'm always lose the part where it serves. How does it help the localities? It helps 95, it helps commuters, and we're losing it. And $4 billion is the beginning, because it's going to be more than that. And there's more federal money involved that will be coming to this too.
Right. So I think you make excellent points, and I promise you, if I didn't think that, I wouldn't say it. I'd dance around the answer, but you make excellent points. The challenge is that we are behind the curve when it comes to using rail transportation. If you go to Europe, you go to other countries, they put the rail in and the communities followed. So the communities were much better positioned on the rail line. Short pump's a great example. You're not going to find a track anywhere near short pump. Next month, you're going to hear from Jen Brule, DRPT. The challenge we have is we need to ensure that where the trains are, where the stations are, you have that last mile transportation that candidly doesn't exist here in Fredericksburg. You're right. You get off here, you don't have a whole lot of options. You don't have 10 DART buses out there. You've got the Fred bus a few times a day, but there aren't many options. That's really what the next step is. Our challenge is, and you said you doesn't get to the storefront, you're right. Right now, most of the trains actually stop at Staples Mill. I love Staples Mill. It's a beautiful part of the state. Please don't yell at me. There's not much to do in Staples Mill. And same thing, there's not public transportation there. However, one of our big challenges is extending these trains to Main Street Station. And you get to Main Street Station, all of a sudden, there are trails, there are bike paths, there are bike rentals, there are buses. Uber and Lyft are all over the place. You have that last mile transportation that candidly should exist all up and down this network. So that is definitely something we have got to look at. To your point, if we put these trains in place, we improve these stations, we improve the service, add them, and nobody takes them because they're not convenient, we have again failed. So that's where the partnership with DRPT is really strong to get that last mile transportation.
No, and I appreciate the answer, and I do appreciate the fact that VRE trains will be running weekends and nights. I would ask at 10:30, last train at DC, then that sometimes they go longer. There's concerts that are. So I don't want to get stuck in.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
I'm a national season ticket holder. I'm tired of driving. Trust me. Yeah, no, I get it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Yes.
It's not a question, it's actually a comment.
3 minutes.
I know, right? One of the things that
That's way too long.
I hear about is, you build it and they will come. One of the things that we're not looking at, it's not in our culture. And so when you talk about overseas and you talk about, like Holland, for example, we ride bikes all the time. It is in our culture. So if you build a bike, path or whatever, we will ride it because that's what we usually do. DC, the bike trail and all that they put together, they're abandoning that right now. So it's about when you do surveys and you're getting the same people to answer the questions for you. So before you build, actually see if you have what it takes to convince people that this is the best way to go. And as the gentleman just said, if they're not going to use it, then you're spending the money and throwing it down the drains because they're not going to use it. The people are going to use it are the ones that are using it now. And maybe those individuals that, maybe the younger generation is saying, hey, I'm going to the game and I know exactly when I'm coming back, or I'm going to eat in DC, and oh, by golly, that food better get there in time for me to be able to jump on that train to come back.
So it's funny, I smirk only because when you say surveys, I worked before this position, I was an executive Amtrak for about 12 years. And we were constantly trying to improve the food and beverage service. And we put out surveys. We said, look, what do you want to see in the cafe car? And we would get back, oh, I want healthy food. And oh, I want vegetarian options. And oh, I want this and that. And so we went very aggressively and replaced the menu with all that stuff. Nobody bought that stuff. They bought hot dog and pizza. So you have to be very careful with the data that you're given. And you're absolutely right on that. The good thing in my mind is that we had record ridership in 2019 on the Amtrak trains. For leisure, not commuting, some commuting, but really our highest days are on the weekends. COVID took that down to basically nothing. Right now in December, this past December, we had the highest December ever. So we have more than recovered all of that ridership. We have seen just from the 2009 start, that first train to Lynchburg and the service that we've added since then, when you add more trains, every one train you add, the ridership more than doubles. It's exponential. Now, a lot of it is culture. A lot of it is the fact that if you, and we eat in Fredericksburg all the time, and you hear the train, you talk to servers and say, hey, do you ever take the train? No, that's just free. Not just free. I mean, a lot of people don't know there's passenger service. So we have a lot of work to do. Most important thing is making sure that the trains we run on time, they run safely, not in that order. They run safely, they run on time, and that it's a pleasant experience. So when people take the train the first time, they're compelled to take it again. It's not going to be easy, but it is much more attractive than the traffic that we have.
Matt?
I love when in these conversations, we talk about, we need to do this, we do this. We've got a big role in this ourselves from the standpoint of, and Jennifer, or I don't know if Jennifer's coming or DRPT's bringing to speak to us. I agree that's a critical piece. The critical number, before you can poll or anything else like that, it's 15 minutes. A person expects to be picked up within 15 minutes, move to their location within a reasonable amount of time, pick that back in 15 minutes, and back on where they want to go. That's the key motivator when it comes to transit. And with Fred or whatever bus system we have, as we move trains into here and start doing the service, if we start planning now, and of course, Dennis Jackson out here as we speak, and Fred, and I've always asked to have a more regional conversation about Fred and what Fred could be, because Fred is not a true transit system yet. We haven't gotten it to that level. That's a conversation we need to have, so we can build what we've got here into what they're planning there, and then it will become a success. But we need to understand, one, we have a role in it, and again, two, taking a poll right now until you have that infrastructure in place, and people understand that I'm gonna get off the train, there's gonna be a bus picking me up within 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm gonna get somewhere, then the dynamic's gonna change. And you are gonna see people using it and using it a lot. And frankly, I agree. And when VDOT finally said a few years back that we can't build ourselves out of, but we can't put asphalt down and build ourselves out of congestion. I mean, that was hallelujah for a moment for a lot of people when VDOT finally came to that acknowledgement. So as much as we talk about van pools and everything else, whether it's the best use of money, we cannot keep doing the things the way we have done them. There has to be a change. And we as this board have a big part to play, especially in this, with regards to what are we gonna do with transit in this region. So.
Monica?
I'll try to be quick. One, I just had a quick question. When you showed the map that's kind of faded in the background there that had the portions that are being expanded, I guess you're doing the bypasses first, or yes, on the outside. Is that, it's accurate that they're all going to be on that east side of the existing tracks?
So yes, kind of. If you're north of Franconia, the passenger tracks will be on the west side because that's where the stations are. In Franconia, you're not see here. In Franconia, so here, the passenger track is on the west side.
Okay.
Franconia, we're actually building a bypass. Oh, you can say it's bypass.
Okay.
That moves the passenger from the west to the east because that's where the stations are. Yeah, so it's.
Fantastic. I have neighbors that the train is almost right in their backyard, so I was wondering, oh, we're going to take like the whole backyard to put more rail. That makes more sense. So thank you for answering that. I also wanted.
If I can, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
please, go ahead.
don't answer the question that's not asked, DJ has.
No, it's okay. If it's
However,
no.
one of the benefits of this is most of the places we have here, the right of way that exists is so wide, there's very little impact, knock on wood, on property. When we did the boots on the ground, there is really great width in a lot of the right of way. Not in Ashland, not in Fredericksburg, but in most of the community up here, you've got a lot of room. So we really don't have a lot of property issues.
That's good. I was just speaking to a neighborhood right near the Brook Station. You probably know what I'm talking about. A couple of my neighbors are like right on there. So, but it sounds like you're handling it just fine. I'm just curious about that. And I just wanted to make a point to I think that the expanded schedule and the later hours will help address some of that cultural issue, because I think here what we're seeing, we're just very individualistic. We don't want to go on everyone else's schedule. We want our thing while we want it, and I don't think that's likely to change. So I think that having those more flexible schedules will help people. That's what the feedback that I keep getting. And I know that the additional rail will help with that as well, as you've explained. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. As a VRE board member, one of the things I've brought up with Rich Dalton is the Wi-Fi. As you know, there are certain spots where they have no Wi-Fi. And I didn't see a slide up there. How are you all trying to, and are you trying to address that?
We are desperately trying to address that because literally that is the number one complaint we get on the train service. The downside to that is that the Wi-Fi solution that we use on passenger trains is basically a big box that sits on top of the train, and it's got, and I'm dumbing it down just so I can understand it, it's got an AT&T cell phone, it's got a Verizon cell phone, it's got a T-Mobile cell phone, and it's got a Cricket cell phone, or whatever the other providers are. And it just goes along the right of way and says, all right, who's got the best signal, grabs it from a cell tower and puts it in the entire train. So just like if you're at a ball game, if there are a lot of people using the phone, the bandwidth is going to be really, really limited. If you're in a bad cell service area, the bandwidth is going to be really, really limited. So we, the train service, are really at the mercy of the number of people that are trying to use that bandwidth and the cell towers that are close by. That is a challenge that we are working very hard to fix. Technology-wise, we, the industry, and I'm talking overseas, I'm talking here, have not found a great way to fix it outside of cell service. However, with all of the broadband money that's in place, we're working closely. We've got heat maps that show, hey, here's where it's really bad. Once you get to Quantico, forget it. You're not going to get anything until you get to Leland Road or just a little south of Leland Road. But we're working with the cell towers to say, you know what, AT&T, put a tower there. We'll help you fund it. We, the state, And the more cell towers you have, the more bandwidth you have, the better that Wi-Fi is. It is a big complaint that we get. It's the number one complaint, and we're aware of it. We're working.
Okay, that's good to know that you're addressing that. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, item B, John Rideout, CMAC STBG, call for projects, brief update.
As FAMPO staff get ready the next 4 or 5 presentations of FAMPO staff, if I can just ask each of the staff members to keep your presentations short. We are running late tonight, and just want to give the committees an update as to where things are. As quickly as you can.
Good evening. We are currently gone through our initial round of scoring for approximately 17 eligible projects for CMAQ funding and 16 for STBG, Surface Transportation Block Grant. One other item that's also in the kind of grouping is also the FAMPO River Crosser study that is not scored by FAMPO because we will be scoring our own projects. So we presented the initial round of scoring to the TAC a couple of weeks ago. And it's been kind of a bit of a learning process. So as Ian mentioned earlier, there's been kind of some teething issues. We've actually been keeping kind of a running list of small little changes. In some cases, it's typos within the scoring number range. In other cases, it could actually be a problematic comma that changes the description. So we're keeping that list. But we're slowly coming to the point where we are going to be finalizing our scoring. We've been in discussion with the various staff members at different levels in this process, and we'll be looking to finalize that for sometime in February for a March publication. So, as I said, we've had draft scoring done. Our next step, again, is to validate that. We hope to receive our budget from VDOT in the next coming weeks, so we'll know exactly how much funding we have. We know FY28, we're waiting for FY29, and then we'll begin the draft allocation, which is going to take into consideration prior rounds of projects that would be eligible for additional funding. There is a very defined process of how we allocate those funds. So we know that there's funding caps, depending on which category you're in, of how much funding you can receive in total, as well as how much funding you can receive in each calendar year. And there are going to be different ways of addressing cost increases. So on a very simplified item is that if there's a cost increase of a given project less than 2%, it's a relatively simple request to the TAC chair as well as Ian. If it's a over 10% cost increase, it actually triggers a full review by the TAC and the policy committee at a later date. So we've started just kind of pulling a few initial rounds scope or kind of a survey of potentially eligible projects. Hopefully we're going to build these out. But at least on the initial review, we have about, what's it, 8 to 10? I forget, maybe it's 9. I can't count fast enough. Projects that we've at least highlighted. We know that as Smart Scale and other funding things do change, that it might pull a couple of projects off, might look and see that there's another project, but it literally does actually go back to, we have to go back and find the original application and see exactly what they asked for. So that's kind of the process in the STBG CMAQ allocation. We'll continue to bring you more information as we get closer to recommending projects for allocation.
Thank you. Any questions for John? All right, thank you very much, John. All right, up next is Inter-Regional Multimodal East-West Mobility Study Roadway Report.
We've only got 2 things to tell you here. As we know, the public comment period is on the go. It only ends on Saturday, so there's no decision to make on the report. We are still receiving public comment. Coley is just going to show you the survey. This is live, folks. So the survey is not closed because we keep it open until the end of the public comment period. All we're showing is a very quick 30-second snapshot of what the public are saying in terms of how many are for this or against this or whatever. So take it as you see it. It's not finished. We will give you the full report with all the public comments and everything else at the end of the process. Buddy, you want to pull up the survey?
I do. It's not loading right now.
Okay.
All right, maybe we'll go on.
Whilst you're doing that, if I can just say the one other thing to bring to your attention is, you'll remember we asked for suggestion from the policy committee as to which projects in the East-West study you wanted us to take further for further study. And it was agreed that the set of 3 roadways in Stafford, the connection between Enon Road and Centerport Parkway, between Centerport Parkway and up through what you guys used to call the Mine Road extension, that set of roadways should be studied further. The items in the transit report, and so the consultants, I gave them instruction to carry on studying those items. That includes bike paths and transit. And we've since had a request from Sponsormania that we, instead of studying further, with just some engineering work on 17,
yeah, on its Church Road.
yeah, that we asked the consultant to instead look at where a potential future on-ramp interchange on the I-95 might be, and to instead focus on the widening of Harrison Road. The county is already doing a portion of Harrison Road widening, and this would be to look at the next portion because it would be where a potential future interchange might be, and also because if you're already widening one portion of Harrison Road, you should carry on. We spoke to the consultant, they're happy to do work on that, so I just want the policy committee to be okay with that. So if anybody's not okay with that, if anybody has any questions, please tell me. But I'd like to tell the consultant to carry on with that as well. We can have a number of roadway projects, but we have to cap it. So far we've only got the 3 in Stafford, and we'd like to add this one in the Spotsylvania area if everybody's okay with it.
Any questions?
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't need a formal motion. It's the third phase, final phase of the study, which is to take the projects that we're not fighting about, that we agree on, for people to do further work on. And this is one of those non-controversial ones. So if you're okay, I'd like to ask them to continue.
Sure. Ian, does that require additional compensation from the
No.
consultant? No.
Part of the contract.
Okay. All right. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay.
Good. Done. That's got the survey results?
Yes.
Just a quick run through. We just want to show you that we've had, is that 1,046 responses?
Yes.
They all live and celebrate.
So that is a lot of responses. We have had a good chunk of those.
Frank has 1,000 of them.
Yeah,
Um,
Fran's got a lot of aliases.
A lot of aliases from Fran. So there you can see the 2 streets that people are most concerned about are US 17 and Route 3, right? Of all the streets we think are problematic, the public thinks those are the big problems, followed by Garrisonville Road. So, you know that, but there's the public's.
Because Fran doesn't live on Gary.
They're the public's comment. We did give the option none of the above because, if people don't want any of them, why didn't say so? 130 people, 2 people said no. There you can see,
A lot of these were within your packet. There were a couple of open-ended questions within our survey, and they were added to the agenda packet, so you could.
in this case, we didn't give them options. We said, tell us whatever you want. And so they gave us all sorts of answers, and we've got this available for you next. Do you support a new river crossing bridge west of the I-95 between Central Park and Southern Stafford? It doesn't say where, right? It's just general. So this is a general comment. You can see the more than 75%, 76% want a crossing of some kind. Where you put it, we didn't ask them. We just said, would you support a crossing? 75%, 76% wanted. And that's an important statistic because we heard earlier all the comments about not in certain locations, right? But this graph shows you people generally want to cross it, but we still have to figure out where to put it. Next one, should the region develop a new I-95 interchange? We gave them the options of the Shelton Boulevard / Central Park, or Harrison Road, or both, or none, right? And if you look there, you can see a minority want neither. It's a healthy minority, but there's a minority who say, no, we don't want any more interchanges. The majority say we want and interchange, and then they're broken up into the different, which options they want.
Is it a minority?
But that's a majority.
No,
It's
no.
a majority of the three
No.
others added together.
Look at the red, yeah, if you look at the red pie, it's not 50%.
No, no, I get that, but it is a majority among the three divisions of them. That's how I look at it.
Sure, but if I asked you this question, would you want an interchange or not want an interchange? It's a
So I could ask
minority.
you any question to get the outcome that I want. I will phrase that question.
Okay. More than 50% of the people that took the survey want something, not nothing. Number 5, do you support a pedestrian and bicycle path that connects Fall Hill Avenue, Central Park to the Spotsylvania Town Center? Just hover over the percentage for me. 72% want it. Then the last one, do you support a pedestrian bike path, Kings Highway, Chatham Heights Road? 71% want it. Those numbers have gone down since a week ago by a little bit. Okay, and then these other questions are demographic questions, which the federal government requires us to keep. So for information, minorities, disabled folks, etc. Thank you, Cody.
You know where most, I'm sorry, do you know where most of these people live that are responding to this?
No.
Would be helpful information.
It's this, so if you remember the 2021 Transportation Improvement Survey that we did, we got 1,060 responses. We do know where those people live, but we promised we'd keep their specific address confidential. So what we did was we aggregated them across our transportation analysis zones. So we can tell you which neighborhood they're in publicly, but we won't tell you where their home location is. We do know that, but we agreed to keep that information confidential. For this survey, we didn't ask people to give us their home location, but we marketed it in the region. So it could be somebody living in any one of the jurisdictions.
Could have just asked for their zip code.
Yeah, that would be.
Like as a required field, because if people in King George are saying they don't need a river crossing west of 95, that's not helpful.
That's true. We've only done marketing in the federal jurisdictions. So someone in King George could know about the study and could take it. But we've specifically done physical information tables at the libraries, at the Fred Center, at the University of Mary Washington. I know that the folks at Celebrate Virginia have told all their residents, and we've seen a big jump in the numbers when they promoted it in their community. So I know a large number come from Celebrate Virginia.
You shared it on your social, I think you have, right?
Yeah, we figure
Yeah, I
it
feel like I saw it.
constantly.
So
Is anybody, if they try to do the survey for a second time, does it kick them out?
He said no, because he did it twice, so.
No, as friends.
Yeah.
So it's not.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
So, the survey that we did in 2021, we made absolutely sure that it was very difficult to do that. We created,
Why did we just need to for this one? Because
it,
this one is probably more important.
well, it takes a lot of work to do that. It's not something you can do quickly, right? And we've had a number of these east-west studies, all sorts of things that we've had to do at fairly short notice. So we built a simple survey. We can do that, but it's a heavy lift. You've got to tweak the software because the software packages that are out there don't all do everything. So you've got to choose your software and spend a long time adjusting that software to do what you want to do. So sometimes we put in the effort when we're going to do a long survey that's going to take 3 months, then we put all that stuff in there. This particular survey, it was a short period. We wanted to do just the opinion on this study and get a high level comment. You'll see that the questions are fairly simple. They're not like complex questions.
And I get that, but I think if you have a controversial question on it, you're gonna get certain people who will just keep taking it to try to jade the result. So I, as an elected official, want the cleanest data possible to make an informed, if I'm gonna use this survey to inform my decision, I wanna make sure that it's clean.
One of the questions is, would you like to give us your email address? So what we totally can do is, many of the folks have given their email address. We can sort by.
And that should be a requirement.
We
from
can sort by.
our surveys.
I'll happily do that,
Yeah.
if you wish to add that as a requirement for our future surveys. But we can sort by email address, and if there are duplicates, we can take the additional ones out and only allow one through and do that.
I can also see how long it's taken them to do the survey.
14 minutes up there.
Yeah, and I mean,
But we'll sort through the email addresses and remove if there are any duplicates.
Okay, Monica?
Yeah, quick question on the survey, because I agree with you. So is staff was putting these surveys together? Who do we have on staff, and not to insult, but there's a science behind surveys, and I only know that because my husband's done this for a long time. Who is it? Do we have people on staff that are adept at that and have done that frequently and understand the dynamics of developing a scientific survey? Can anyone answer that?
so I did go to grad school and know about public participation and surveys and stuff.
I just wanted, valid question, that because you're in it. so. Okay.
That doesn't mean that all the software is,
I know, when you
perfect.
jump from one thing to the next, it only gives you certain.
It's a complex question. I can talk about this further,
Yeah,
but I don't want
we
to.
can take that offline, but I think the members' comments are valid that, and it depends also on what kind of direction you gave Cully. So we can talk about that more offline, what you were trying to get at here. But as we all know, and I will tell you in Stafford County, and I'm sure you guys do this also in the city and Spotsy, and they know I'm known as the data queen. If there's no data there and valid data, I'm not voting on it because I don't have enough information.
Sure.
So,
We will make those two adjustments to all of our future studies. We'll ask for an email address and we'll ask for zip code.
yes, Pam.
One short comment. I was going to sit in my hands on this one. But individuals that know and are interested in a survey, they're going to take it. So you're going to get those individuals that are interested, and you're not getting a sample of the community. Getting the email is great, knowing where it came from, but you're not getting a full sample of everyone to say that we're going to hang our decision on this data simply because we think that everybody participated. So individuals that know about it, went online, got it, yes. But who else? How did we spread the word and say, we are, we need your input and we need to get this data because percentage of minority, small, yes, they should get online. Hispanics, low. People from outside of Celebrate, not there.
So I'd say three things in response to that. I think it's a valid concern. It's the same concern you have with every survey in the world. It's not unique to FAMPO. What Coley does is physically go in person to the Fred Transit Center and stand there with a phone or an iPad and encourage people to fill it in there and then. We reached out to some of the African-American churches.
Reached out to all of them, every single one.
We have made a lot of effort to try and broaden our reach there. We spoke to
Josh Cole.
leaders in certain communities.
Joshua Cole.
Josh Cole, a former delegate who is a churchman in the region. We reached out to that particular church group, a bunch of other church groups. Holly went to the university campus and literally put up a big information table there and encouraged students to take it on site. At Freight Transit, get people who ride the bus to take it on site. We don't just.
Here's what, I think you've done a good job, but this has created way more questions for me that I'm not gonna go into right now. So I think what we need to do from a FAMPO perspective is ensure that when we talk about equity and participation, that we're doing it in a way that is equitable. And so I think we definitely need to discuss FAMPO survey results in the future.
We can have a discussion about how we market our surveys and all of that. Very happy to do that.
Yeah, okay. Collie, yes,
Coley, it's like Coca-Cola. If you have any recommendations of people that I should start reaching out to, please let me know, because I can only go to so many businesses and so many localities via email. So, and schools as well. So please send me email addresses, phone numbers of places that you think I should go and talk to.
thank you very much.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Next.
Okay, the new river crossing research. So this is nothing to do with the East-West study. Right? All the comments we heard earlier tonight were all about the East-West mobility study and the suggestion by our consultant that we investigate a river crossing at some point. We were then asked by two of our jurisdictions and then by the policy committee to start doing some research, find out more information about what the data looks like, traffic patterns, potential sites to put a potential bridge if we want to go further with it. So I'm giving you just a very short update. This will take you literally 3 minutes. So if we can move to the next slide, I'll just do it from here just to save time. We've begun doing the research from the TAC. We called together a small working group, the TAC nominated people from each jurisdiction, VDOT, etc., and FAMPO staff to just start doing the research. It's not, and I make this very clear, it's not an engineering or environmental study involving NEPA. To do that, we would be required to have a consultant because in-house staff would not be able to do a full NEPA study, particularly if it becomes a full EIS and engineering study of how to design the. This is not that kind of a study. It's investigating essentially feasibility in broad strokes. So the research is going to be presented to the TAC and the policy committee on an ongoing basis, and the jurisdictions who request presentations, and any of our other committees as well. Staff working group started to meet, we think, twice. We've also invited the Virginia Outdoor Foundation to attend because we're required to in terms of the easement that the city has issued. And so the Virginia Outdoor Foundation attended our group, given us their input. So we kicked it off. It's, remember, just start the meeting to find out the data of research. Next slide. First thing we did was an analysis of the traffic flow. Where is the traffic? Where is it going to? Where is it coming from? Next slide. What we are using is what typically people call big data to analyze traffic flows. The big data set that we're using is called the streetlight index. And just be very careful about this wording because you need to understand what you're looking at. People often misunderstand what a streetlight data map is. It represents a relative volume of trips, but not an estimated count of trips. So think of it more as a percentage. What percentage of the trips go here or there? It's not an exact count of trips. Where does the data come from? It's anonymized data collected from personal smart devices such as cell phones, in vehicles, or on pedestrians or people who cycle, who take a bike. We use streetlight data as a tool, one of many tools, to understand the origins and destinations of trips and general traffic flows in our region. One of the tools we have is the traffic demand model. This is a different tool. What this does is look at where the vehicles are physically moving to, or where the people on their bike are physically cycling, where the people who are walking are going to. So it's monitoring, but anonymously, movements of people and vehicles. Next slide. So we have mapped traffic flows of trips originating in Stafford County and traveling south across the river within the FAMPO and GWRC region and one or two neighboring counties. We did not use data of vehicles that are leaving the region and going to South Carolina or going to New York or whatever else, because we want to understand local trips. We also analyzed trips originating in Spotsylvania and the city of Brenningsburg that were crossing the river in a northbound direction into Stafford County and the surrounding localities. This gives us an insight as to where trips are currently happening now, right now, and where the general traffic flow is. But this is a new tool which VDOT makes available to metropolitan planning organizations in Virginia. Very useful tool, but don't try to take these maps and have them say things that they're not intended to say. It's not an exact total number of trips. The first thing you'll want to fight with me about is that you'll count up the number of trips going north and you'll count the number of trips going south and you'll say they don't add up. Where the cars end up in the river. Well, there's a reason for that. It's that, first of all, it doesn't do trip chaining. So if the car goes to more than one destination, it's only going to count the first destination and then the car will appear to disappear, right? Or if we use different geographies, Stafford and Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania are not the only geographies that we use. We also look at we look, so just bear that in mind. I know if you add up the north and southbound, they don't add up. I'm telling you that that is the case. It should be the case. You should expect it to be the case. Next slide. Where the trips are currently happening. So the map on the left is the region. The map on the right blows up the important bits. You can see the colors, the greens in the legend at the top. The darker the color, the more trips. Okay, so this is the first map. The cream color is where the trips originate. Any vehicle is included if it started its trip in Stafford County. Any vehicle, right? Cars, trucks, anything. And then we looked for the destination of those vehicles. Where are they going to? Now, you can see that they are clustered around those locations, and I'm going to run quickly to the front of the room just to point them out. So each one of these things are not just an accidental shape we drew. Those are the census blocks, census block groups actually, from the US Census. That's the architecture. So that is the census block that includes the whole of Central Park, right? It is the #1 destination with the most trips. The count relative. Now, this is where I said, don't think it's the count of every vehicle. It's a relative metric. 9,911. The next biggest destination is 5,000. Do you see how that is massive, right? The next biggest one is #2. That is the census block that includes Spotsylvania Town Center, the cinemas, the Costco, the houses around there, right? It's that whole census block. It's the #2 destination for all people crossing the river south that stay within the region, right? #3 is downtown Fredericksburg, basically. The hospital, right? You can see that they're all clustered here. 4 is downtown, right? The hospital downtown. 5 is the central part of Fredericksburg on the eastern side of I-95. That's where the cars are going. This is a new tool that we've not had before to be able to analyze traffic flows that we recently had as an NPO. That is where the trips are going. There are some down in Spotsylvania, right? It's the 7th largest number of trips. Close to the I-95, towards Massaponax, to, where all those stores are, and the commercial areas. But this tells you where the traffic is going when people get into their car or get into their truck in Stafford and head south. That's where they're trying to get to. And by far, the most number of people are trying to get to Central Park. By far, the next destination is half of that. And after that, it gets even worse. But that's where they're trying to get to. Flip to the next one. These are crucial maps because it's important to know where the traffic wants to go before we start building infrastructure. So this is the inverse. All the trips that start in Spotsylvania.
One question. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
Mrs. Benoit has a question.
Yes.
Can you point on that map where the new V8 facility is gonna go with Spotsylvania?
It's
Might get help from a Spotsylvania rep.
close to where that word Spotsylvania is.
Is it east or west of 95?
It is east of 95, but right up against 95.
It's in that little triangle.
Which triangle?
There,
That's right.
see
Okay,
there?
gotcha.
So it's in
So
that,
you can guarantee that's gonna turn dark green pretty soon too.
yes, that will turn dark green.
Yeah.
Correct, correct.
Stafford County is the largest proportion of veterans
Yes.
in the state of
So
Virginia.
that will increase, correct.
Yeah.
But from Stafford, I mean,
Stafford going to there,
and
it's going to increase.
but it's between the I-95 and US 1.
Yeah.
So there are roads already going there.
Yeah.
And Spotsylvania is building a huge number of road improvements to take the extra traffic, new bus services and all sorts of things. Next slide, please. So this is going the other way. If a trip starts anywhere in Spotsylvania or anywhere in the city of Fredericksburg, where does it go?
Central Park.
If it's going north and crossing the river.
Okay.
If it goes to Central Park, we don't need to build a bridge. But if we want to think about where to build a bridge, you have to ask, where is the traffic now going? So if it starts in Spotsylvania and it starts in the city of Fredericksburg, look where it's going, right? That's 17 along there. These are the areas in Stafford that trips are trying to go to. So number one, the number one destination is this triangle north of 17, west of I-95. That's the number one destination of people going north over the river from Spotsylvania and from the city of Fredericksburg.
Going to the Red Roof Inn.
That's where they're going. There is traffic going here that is crossing the river, but of course we have multiple bridges that reach that destination. You've got the new Chatham Bridge, you've got the US 3, Route 3 bridges, great capacity to reach that destination, but a large number. What's there? Walmart.
More people are using that to avoid 95 and going around. That's what I do.
There you go. There's an example, but definitely that's the number two. And the number three is where you all live, right? The block group that includes, the block group that includes Celebrate Virginia, right?
They go shop.
Now, this is nobody's opinion. This is nobody's opinion. This is where the traffic is going now, right?
Just because I've noticed, point of clarification, these are trips from Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, heading north on the river crossings. These are folks who are in Fredericksburg or Spotsylvania visiting folks.
They're visiting, yeah.
Just make sure.
Or they could be.
Or they
people
went
from
to Celebrate Day.
Went to dinner and.
And
then
are coming home. Correct.
Or went shopping
Correct.
and going back home.
So when you look at where's the traffic going, you need to understand it. And this is a new tool which tells us where it's going. So this is the kind of research that the staff are doing to find out whether there's merit in doing additional river crossings. And this is what we're finding out. Next slide.
Chris, I have one question.
Yeah, on the
Ian.
two side by side.
Just one quick question. This data, is it broken down by time of day, day of the week?
At the moment, it's all day in this particular data run.
Okay.
But you can do data runs that can break it down, of course, but each one takes hours to this thing runs. But we can do by time of day, or that can be done. But this is an all-day metric.
And it's by cell phone?
Well, any device that gives location that can be tracked. Right?
So if there's 4 people in a car, they each have a device, is it counted?
So that's why this is not a count.
Relative.
It's a relative.
You're just seeing where it's gone.
The
But you-
relative metric, it's not an absolute count, it's a relative metric because they've got a computer program that counts out duplicates and all sorts of things that they do to fix that. It's a very expensive program and a very expensive data set.
Have their phone on incognito. Would not get
So
counted.
if you blank out your phone so that it cannot be traced, it will not be included. But that's why I said it's a relative metric. It's not an absolute count for that reason. So there's the two side by side, right? Here's where the people in Stafford want to get to. Here's where the people in Spotsylvania and the city of Fredericksburg want to get to. That's what we know. Next slide. We've tabled them here. Just
Frames, or do you pull the date?
so
What time frame? What day?
So we have excluded the period in the height of COVID. So this is taken just before that.
Okay.
So it's 2019, just before COVID hit, right? So because in COVID it all changed and it's very difficult to know which is a good time during the height of 2020 COVID to pick data. And they don't yet have the data available for 2022. So that's what we use.
Probably increased.
Yeah, so here's your number one spot, Central Park, right? Number two spot, Spotsylvania Town Center. Then the northbound, you can see these. The ones in red are the ones which it would make sense to build somewhere crossing west of the I-95. The ones that don't have a red arrow, it's not going to help building a bridge west of the I-95 because it won't help their origin and destination pairs, right? But the red arrow ones are the ones that such a bridge might help because they're going to destinations and pairs of destinations and origins of destinations that line up with some sort of a crossing west of the I-95. Doesn't tell us where to build it. Like the East-West study doesn't tell you where to build it. It just says somewhere in this vicinity, the road network doesn't connect and it's a problem. And this data tells you a similar thing. It doesn't tell you where to build a bridge. It just says linking up where people want to go to now that we know about already from their cell phone data. This is where they're coming from and this is where they want to go to.
So Ian, one of my questions would be, and I appreciate and I'm glad that you got the data before COVID. However, given that, 65% of the people are teleworking, we don't know if that pattern is going to continue. I wonder if our data is valid.
So we can run the data again when the full 2022 data is available.
When's that?
We don't know. We'll find out. But we haven't been able to use the 2022 data yet because we don't have a full year and the data wasn't yet available. The 2020 data, I think, is suspect. I wouldn't use 2020 data right now for anything. You'll see BRE won't be using their future projections based on 2020 data. It's a mess, right? So when we get a full 2022 data, we'll run it again. My suspicion is that the total number of trips might have dropped, but that the destinations won't change a huge amount. I think what's more likely is VRE's destinations will change because people are not going into DC for work anymore. But if they're staying locally, they're going to probably do these trips in bigger numbers because I'm not going to work in DC. Therefore, I've got time to go to Central Park even more than I used to have because I'm working from home. What do I want to do? Get a burger. Stop off at Wegmans, right? Because I don't have to go to DC anymore. So I think these numbers will get higher after COVID, not lower, because they're not commuting as far anymore. They're working from within the region. I think the work from within the region numbers are going to go up post-COVID, not down. So these numbers will actually go up.
Okay, Pam?
So the federal government is they have a lot of buildings in DC. And so they are planning on asking people to come back to work.
Absolutely.
And so that, I'm one of those. And so we have to go back in, even if it's going to start 2 or 3 days a week. And then
that
maybe
will help BRE. They'll be glad to hear it. Because their ridership compared. Next slide, please, because I want to finish. People want to go. So what else are we doing as a staff? So we are identifying multiple route options to model. Okay, where could we build a bridge? We don't know. So we've got 5 or 6 options that we're looking at. We're working with the BDOT Transportation and Mobility Planning Division because they can run the travel demand model for us and tell us if we build a bridge here, what will happen? If we build a bridge there, what will happen? If we build a bridge there, what will happen? When we get those results and sort through them, we can show them to you. We have contacted the Virginia Outdoor Foundation and the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust because they have the environmental easements. So we don't want to wreck the environment if we want to pursue a thing like this. We need to find out what environmental resources are there. Donors make contact with those organizations. They come into our meetings. We've contacted the economic development departments of the various jurisdictions because we were asked, what will the economic impact be if we build an additional river crossing? We don't know the answer yet, but we're working with them to find out. And we've solicited cost estimates for the two things we can't do, the engineering and the NEPA slash EA, EIS, whatever has to be done. And we will have to, if we want to proceed, get funding to hire the consultant to do engineering and NEPA, if you decide after we've done our work that you want to proceed with it. So I'm saying this to folks from Celebrate Virginia. We're not even there yet. We don't even know if we're going to have the money to pay for the study, little, and whether we're going to hold the bridge. So I would encourage you to be calm. We can't build any bridge right now. All we can do is some investigation and research and finding out the facts. There's nothing we can, even if my good friends on the policy committee wanted to vote to build a bridge, there's no money. Right? We're just doing the research to find out whether it's possible or whether it's desirable. If it is, we then have to take the next step, do the engineering, do the NEPA study. And if it's still a good idea after that, then it's time to decide where do we find the money. And if you really want to protest, that'll be the time to protest, because that'll be the time we might be able to make a decision. We're so far from that, we can't make a decision. But that's the information I have to report back to you at this stage. We're doing the research for you, and we'll tell you each step of the way what we find out.
All right, thank you, Ian. Any questions? All right, wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on to Carrie, who's going to give us our great smart skill.
The good news.
The good news. The recommendations.
All right.
You already gave us the good news at GWRC.
So this is just a quick review of the latest CTV meeting, wherein they gave us their staff recommended funding scenario. Next slide, please.
If I can just acknowledge, is she still in the room, our CTV member?
She was sitting on the floor.
Might have gone to the restroom, shame.
Look on the floor.
But our CTV member has been here all night listening to us, so.
So because it's so late, I wanted to let you all know you have this in your packets, and that at the end of this presentation is my email. So if you have any questions, you can just email me about it. I'm just going to go lightning fast. This is just a summary of the last 5 rounds. We just finished up our 5th round. All of the funding, all the submitted applications, what was scored, what was funded. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
I know, we're trying. It's not going.
It's done, haven't I?
Yeah.
Can you roll it?
There you go.
Thanks, great job.
Okay, so this is just the evaluation factors. We have 6 of them: safety, congestion, accessibility, land use, economic development, and environment. As you might recall, the last round before this one, we got moved into type B, and it has served us well. We're doing pretty well in type B. Next slide. This is with our funding distribution for round 5. Next slide. And this is our staff recommended funding scenario summary.
Across the state.
I'm sorry?
Across the whole.
Yes, across the whole state. We have 2 pots, district grant program and the HPPV, which is our high priority program funding. That is what we, sorry, you threw me off there, Ian.
Sorry.
Our district grant is how we compete with the rest of the Fredericksburg Construction District, and high priority is the whole state. 2 pots of funding we're going against. This is what everybody's waiting for, our recommended projects. All of these stars are us. The red stars are our regional projects. We got 5 that were funded, and the gold stars are our locality projects. I'll just focus on the 5. GWRC got US 1 Lake Hill Road in Stafford County. FAMPO got, sorry, VCR Regional Project. That's a bike and pedestrian project in Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania. Down here, we got the Dixon Street in Fredericksburg City. That's a GWRC project.
That widens the last 2-lane section of Dixon Road to 4 lanes.
Yeah, coming out of Fredericksburg into Spotsylvania, and also gives us a shared use path. This one is US 1 bike and pedestrian facilities from Harrison Road to Kings Mill Drive. That's a combination of shared use path and other modalities to get us connected from Idlewild all the way down to Harrison Road. And this one is American Legion Road, Eskimo Hill Road turn lanes to Route 1, and that's also in Stafford County, and that's the safety. So,
Did you skip 610 for a reason?
Oh, it's at the very
no,
bottom.
I didn't go over any of the locality
Okay.
projects, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just went over the regional ones this time.
If you add up those red and yellow ones, it's about $150 million, which is our biggest ever haul. Very excited about that.
We did very well as a region. Everybody did great. Next slide. So, as I said, this has been our best outcome so far. This just goes over our regional projects over the last 5 rounds. This is our round 1 through 4, and this is our 5th round.
And if you look at round 4 and round 5, you'll see it's a much bigger number of projects. And that's also because we moved into a middle category. When somebody asked about the category, so round 4 and round 5 is in the new category. We're doing much better.
Next slide. So the next steps from February to April, the CTB will consider any revisions to this funding scenario. April to May, they will have public hearings on this group of projects and any potential revisions to it. And then the consensus funding scenario will be developed for the whole CTB. And then at the June meeting, they will solidify this group of projects and they will adopt them for the 6-year improvement program. That was it.
All right, any questions for Carrie? Thank you very much, and thank you to the staff. I know everybody worked very hard on all these applications. Not an easy lift at all. Okay, our next item is an action item. This is resolution 2315, endorsing the fiscal year 24-27 transportation improvement program, project list for air quality conformity analysis.
Motion to approve resolution 23-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item G.
The last item on the agenda. Madam Chair, this is an item which was requested specifically by Mr. Ross and Francois Vinassi here tonight. And the reason he requested this, it's an old study, right? This is not anything new, but he said to me that she knew members of the party committee might not be aware of this. And because we were talking around on-ramps and off-ramps on the highways and bridges, that he would like to draw the attention of the new members to this study. But you can see the date on this presentation. It's not my presentation, it's before I even joined FAMPO. And I'm just going to flip through it very quickly unless people specifically want me to deal with this. But Mr. Ross in the so I'll just quickly flip through it. Lots of these projects have already been built or they're in the process of being built. So
The 5-year fund.
the northbound Rappahannock River crossing is built. The southbound river crossing is built. The FedEx lanes are currently under construction. Then it looks at potential lanes with northbound between 126 and 130 and the reverse. A southbound off-ramp at exit 126 and other interchange improvements at exit 126. The 126 off-ramp is being worked on now, but the southbound and northbound lane on 995 did not win funding at small scale. So those are things you already know about. Next one. So this study, before my time, as I said, looked at a full access on-ramp, off-ramp into Central Park near the rest area, a full access near Harrison Road, and improved access at exit 126. Next slide. I'm going to skip through all of this because it's just the background. So they looked at types of interchanges that could be used, and there's the diamond style interchange, which is proposed to Harrison Road. Next slide. There's a different version. Next slide. There's the location that potentially it could be built in Spotsylvania on Harrison Road to get you onto the I-95 north and south. You can see in yellow the additional lanes that would need to be built on I-95, the bridge, plus the on-ramps and off-ramps. Next slide. This is the one that was proposed in this particular study for entering into Central Park from the I-95. There's a particular proposal option for how to build those on-ramps and off-ramps. It's more complex. But that's what was looked at in that particular study. Next slide. And this is the potential work on exit 126, which is close to the new VA clinic. So some of these proposals have already been taken up by the county. So the county has funded some of them have been funded through small scale, some of them have been funded through, I think, a build grant and all sorts of other. So many of these projects are currently being worked on. Next slide. Then they looked at what the impacts of all of these are to build these new on-ramps and off-ramps. Next slide. If you could see in each set of two bars there, the bar on the left is what we would have if we didn't build anything. The bar on the right of each of the two pairs is what the traffic volume would be if we did build a particular interchange. So if we got the interchange into Central Park, you can see there that road that goes to the left, that is Plank Road. And you can see that if we built that on-ramp, it would reduce the traffic on Route 3 on Plank Road. For example, the closest to the I-95 from 135,000 cars down to 119,000 cars or trucks or vehicles or whatever the case is. Remember, it's red because anything over the factor of 1 is severely congested. So it will remain severely congested, but at a lower level, less cars or trucks or whatever. And you can see the rest of that. Next slide. If we build the I-95 interchange, you will see what the impact will be, and you can see there again, Route 3 still remains somewhat congested, but at a lower level. Same impact for building the widening of Harrison Road and the Harrison Road interchange. Next slide. This is more regional. If we build that regional Harrison exchange, you can see again, the most congested traffic gets reduced, but some of the traffic on Courthouse Road actually gets worse. It goes from 146,000 to 152,000. Next slide. Then they did a cost benefit quotient. It's not a full cost benefit analysis because it only uses a limited number of factors. Next slide. They looked at, the last 30-year lifespan of the infrastructure, etc. You could see there, it's in your pack. So everybody on the policy committee is in your pack, and all of these slides are on the website, so you can read each of these factors that were used. I don't want to bore you with this time of night. And there is, at that stage, right, what the cost estimates would look like for building the on-ramps into Central Park. You're looking at that stage at 53, 54 million, but by now with inflation, Marty Parker will tell you should probably double that number at least. Maybe even more than double. Next slide. There's the exit 128, which is Harrison Road. It's looking at 67 million. Again, probably double that number by this stage. Next slide. The exit 126 improvements. There you can see in millions again what the cost is of all of that. We're in hundreds of millions of dollars again. Next slide. So then it does a relative score, very high level kind of relative score to see which is the most beneficial project. And you can see there that the one on Harrison Road scores in between always. It's not as bad as the one and not as good as the other kind of thing. Sometimes it scores really well, but generally it scores in the middle of the pack. Next slide. And that relative cost benefit project. I don't personally put much store into these cost benefit analysis numbers that are in this particular study because they're out of date and they only use a limited number of factors to calculate the relative cost benefit analysis. If you want to do a proper cost benefit analysis, it's more complicated than what we've done in this particular study. But anyway, I was asked to show you these slides, so I'm showing them to you. Next slide. The study was used to support a number of small scale applications, which you've seen those of you being on the band longer than I have, which is most of you will know how that played out. We did get the bridges. VDOT was built as lovely new bridges across the I-95. We did get several of these other projects, some are in the pipeline, some like the extra lanes on I-95 between exit 130 and 126. Twice now, Swanscale has rejected them in terms of scoring and funding. So we haven't got funding for those 2 lanes. Next slide. Yeah, so that's as far as it is. I was just asked to share this to you by Mr. Ross. As you know, any member of the committee can request something we put on the agenda. We did request it. I've done the study. Happy to take any questions, but this was not my study, it's before my time. So I was just doing it as requested.
Any questions?
I just,
Yes.
I just point out this is like 3rd or 4th study we've done. And I'm just surprised they would want to put it in, because when this first was put out, he went nuts because it showed that the Fredericksburg interchange was number 1 when it came to cost effectiveness, amount of traffic.
Yeah, I've often it, so I've done it, so that the new members are aware of the study, and that is, apart from
Right. We have any more comments?
I correspondence is in your pack, but it's nothing that's chattering that, it's just, feel free to go through it in your pack. We just point these things out to you, but there's no formal letter written to FAMPO requiring some action. These are just general information on the items that we put there to you.
Okay, we have any staff and agency reports?
I'd just like to introduce our new staff member. He has joined us previously, but was not a policy committee member. Can you please stand up, Connor? That's Connor Anderson. Connor is our GIS technician and a data expert. So when I need those maps made with all those numbers, I call Connor and he does a great job. So welcome to FAMPO.
Welcome, Connor.
Thank you.
All right, any board member and chair comments? Board member comments? Yes.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who came out to speak tonight. There were a lot of, conflicting, speeches and comments, but we really need to hear the things that you have to say and what you think. So thank you so much for taking this one.
Any other board member comments?
I did address, I wasn't formally invited, but I did address about how many folks went to a meeting, about 170. The Celebrate Virginia meeting on our research and our projects, but just informally, I wasn't publicly part of the program, but I did go along and listen to those concerns on our behalf and make a couple of points so that they understood where we are in the process, which is right at the beginning.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'll just, I usually don't make any comments, but just to tie into what the 2 of you guys said, because I know we don't usually have a packed room. I've never had to try to find parking before when I was like, what is going on? So thank you guys for coming on, especially since it's late. I think as we talk about the river crossing more, maybe doing it in a more conducive room to public comments is something we're gonna have to look at. I think you guys surprised us all tonight. We didn't really realize that we were gonna have so many people here. As Ian and Mr. Ola said, we're in the beginning phases of this. And obviously, you know that all of us, most of us sitting at this table are elected officials. So just come to these meetings, you're doing the right thing by getting informed and not listening to maybe one board member in one area over another, because this is where you'll get the real accurate information versus it being politicized, because it is an election year and you're going to hear all kinds of crazy stuff. Like there's going to be a river in Central, or, in Central Park and Celebrate next month, or a bridge. So I just want to let you know that we're listening to your feedback. And we love that you guys are engaged, and this is how we make the best informed decisions for the community as a whole. So I just wanted to say that, and definitely stay informed and get feedback from a lot of people, not just one person.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, I don't have any comments. Our next meeting is February 27th at 7:30, and meeting is adjourned.